Okay, it's an Oberheim apology, and Andertons gets a UBXA. It's quite interesting that I've changed the setup of how I do recording. The whole idea is that I get better clarity when I'm playing instruments, because the old recording system kind of left the instruments flat without having to do something like run them through a door. So I've changed how it all works, and you would have seen on an earlier video of this thing here, which is a zoom, and there's a microphone just off camera here. But in order to make the whole thing work, you have to sync it, and you need your mobile phone to do that. So in order to record this session, I've been going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, getting bits and bobs, which is quite hilarious, really. But that's reality. Anyway, you didn't come to listen to my technical woes. Okay, this is a bit of an apology and a bit of a rant in the same way. Last week I said that I thought the new Oberheim OBX8 synth was somewhere in the £1,500 to £2,000 range. What was I thinking? Why did I think this machine was in that price range? Nope, this synth is actually priced at £4,800. Or in that region, it's something like £4,798, I think, on the Andertons website as of this morning. How could I think this synth was so cheap? The truth is, I had written in my notes prior to recording last week's rant that number range. I don't know where I got that number range from, but I had recorded that number range. So that's where it came. So I apologise for that information error. I did actually put it in an update in the notes to last week's video anyway, because I got it wrong. But given what we know about the Oberheim, we know that the Oberheim have been working on for Sequential, and we know that Sequential charge a premium for their product. Why am I surprised it's £4,800? But you have to ask yourself, is a synth worth that much money? Especially a brand new synth. I mean, I question whether a Jupiter 8 is worth £20,000. And I also question, I saw a DX7, sorry, not a DX7, a DX1 go up for sale in the last week or so. And the guy wants $101,000 for it. Yes, $101,000. You heard it right. Do I think a DX1 is worth that? No. Do I think a DX1 is worth reportedly the $40,000 that Syntor sold the DX7 to Sweetwater? And I put a caveat on that, right? I've been told that. I don't know for certain that is correct. But somebody was trying to justify the larger value and put that actually out in the comments. So let's look at this from a buyer's perspective, shall we? If I go out and I buy an 88 key workstation from those names that you can think about, and given that you know what kind of keyboards that I have if you watch the channel, you can probably guess which ones I'm hinting at. They are currently selling, the top end flagship workstations are currently selling for £3,500 in the UK, right? And dollar, typically it's pound for dollar, so probably around the same amount in dollars over on the other side of the pond. With equivalent 61 note keyboards from those flagship ranges, somewhere in the region of £2,000 to £2,500. That's for a fully functional workstation. £3,500. And I look back at my records, and again, those that know I own a Jupiter 80, and it is a beautiful synthesizer, the Jupiter 80, very underrated, and stopped way before it really got its second wind. But my Jupiter 80 was an awesome synth, and I paid £2,800 for that. And there is nothing I cannot do with a Jupiter 80. I don't need any of the other synths, but I do have them. But my Jupiter 80 is a phenomenal piece of kit. Of course, that was when I had some money. I don't have any money at the moment for various reasons. So when I looked back and I thought, well, okay, what did I pay for the Jupiter X? And I had to be loaned the money to buy the Jupiter X because I'm broke. And I paid a tad over £2,000 for my Jupiter X. And I bought my Jupiter X after it had been out for over 18 months. And the Juno X that's just come out is currently sub £2,000 in the UK. By many outlets. Now, Roland's retail price is a little over 2,000, but actually most of the outlets in the UK are selling it for sub 2,000. Behringer has come along, and they're marketing the UBXA and the new PPG Wave, which is due to make an appearance before too long. They've stated that they're almost there on the PPG Wave as well, but the UBXA. For sub £1,500, I suspect it's going to come in at $1,499. But still, they're talking about sub £1,500. Now, yes, this is reimagined architecture, and I accept that. Still, they're making a synthesizer here, a very awesome synthesizer by all accounts, by everybody who has so far reviewed the synthesizer that Behringer have made in terms of the UBXA, and also the PPG Wave has been reviewed by, and I can't think what his name is now, one of the guys who actually helped develop the original 2.2 version of the PPG Wave, and he said it is so close to the original. But those two awesome synthesizers that were 80s pop legend are going to be sub 1,500. Then we get into the red sector. Now, I'm not a Nord fan, I have to be honest. The two Nords that I've had to play with, I've not got on with particularly well. But many are Nord fans. So if we go and look at the red corner, and just as a side, if you listen to the Keyboard Chronicles or watch the Keyboard Chronicles on this thing, one question they always ask their guests is red or not, referring to Nord. Anyway, if I go and look at the Nord A1, that's currently retailing for about £1,500 in the UK, but probably the more functional synthesizer is the Nord Wave 2, and that's, did I say Nord A1 or Nord Wave 1? I meant Nord A1 was the first one, and the Nord Wave 2 is retailing for about £2,000. Okay, let's go over and talk about Dave Smith instruments, or sequential, whichever way you want to call them, depending on which day of the week it is. The Sequential Prophet 10, which is considered the premium keyboard, weighs in at £3,500. While I can justify me spending that sort of money on an 88 key workstation, because a workstation by its very nature is multifunctional, can I justify spending £3,500 on a 61 key synthesizer? I'm not so sure about that, I have to be honest. But of course, you can also go and buy a Prophet Rev 2 for sub 2,000 brand new. I looked those up on the interweb this morning just to make sure I wasn't getting my prices wrong. Which is a real analog synth with digital controls. But it's an analog synth at the end of the day. And it's also limited to just 8 voices. So if I was to sort of take an analogy here to the Behringer, sorry, the Oberheim, you know, that Rev 2 is kind of an analogy. It's kind of similar to what the Oberheim OBX8 is offering in terms of specification. So, what I should say is I'm not going to comment on functionality of the keyboards that I've mentioned a minute ago. I'm not going to comment on functionality because that would take a much, much longer video than the video that I'm shooting right now. Thus to say that all these keyboards that I have mentioned are very capable in the field that they're aimed at. That's one thing to bear in mind. So the question really is the OBX8 really worth £4,800? This is a premium over the sequential Prophet 10. And given that Oberheim and Dave Smith are working together, you know, you've got to turn around and say, what are you getting for the additional £1,300? I'm not sure. I really am not sure. I haven't seen enough of the Oberheim OBX8 to really make an informed judgment on what makes the £1,300 if I look at the Prophet 10, or what makes £2,500. Well, more than that. Let's say between £2,500 and £3,000 for some of the other synths I've mentioned over the Oberheim. Apart from the fact it's got the Oberheim name and lineage. My gut says, does this make sense? My gut says no. But what do you guys think about the statement? Is £4,800 too much for the OBX8? Now, what you're going to find is that there are going to be some keyboard players out there that have that sort of money knocking around and can afford to go and buy the Oberheim OBX8. But I severely doubt that most grassroots keyboard players can afford that sort of money, especially when you think about the UBXA is going to hit the market within the next 6 months, probably even sooner. In fact, you might actually see it by the time you see this video. But that's going to hit the shelves at £1,500. You get a lot of Oberheim in the Behringer, but is there enough Oberheim in the Behringer? Sorry, is there not enough Oberheim in the Behringer to justify trying to buy an Oberheim? I would say I could justify buying the OBX8 if it was in the £1,500 to £2,000 region, which appears to be the current pitch point for most of these manufacturers at the moment. Most of these manufacturers that are pushing synths into the market, new synths, whether they be reimagined or new synths, they seem to be pushing them into the market at £1,500 to £2,000. That seems to be the sweet spot, especially for a 61-note synthesizer. Maybe a 76 synthesizer action keyboard may command a slight premium. But for the 61-note keyboard, that seems to, I keep saying 66, 61-note keyboard, that seems to be the sweet spot. Do I think the price of the Oberheim will drop? I think it will. I don't think they will get enough keyboard throughput at 4,800 to justify the production run. I really don't think that's. I think they've mispriced it. I think if you look at the sequential Prophet 10 and the Oberheim OBX8, yes, on the Oberheim OBX8 you get all the previous versions, OBX, OB8, OBXA. I think were all presets that are actually on the board with sound sources. So you get all those on this board, but is it enough to justify the price point and the premium? Look, guys, at the end of the day, you're going to make a decision with your wallet. But what do you think about the price of the OB? I mean, ignore the features and the Oberheim name, but what do you think about the price point? Is that too rich for your blood? I think for many it's going to be. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. And the second part of this week's rant is the fact that Andertons released a video onto their YouTube channel showing their the fact that they've been given access to one of the pre-production units of the UBXA. Now, there have been a few shows recently. Plaza in the UK, which is more sort of kind of aimed at professional audio and stage work, as opposed to keyboards and EDM, although there is a keyboards and EDM presence there. Super Booth in Berlin, which actually I have to be honest and say, apart from a couple of bits, was a bit of a damp squid. And the Brighton Music Conference, which is kind of more orientated towards the DJ, I would probably say. And I've been scouring all the press releases from the manufacturers for something that actually is interesting. And honestly, there is not a lot that actually has come out. Super Booth had loads of Eurorack stuff, okay? I don't have Eurorack. I have no intention of getting Eurorack anytime soon, so it's kind of irrelevant to me. So it didn't really float my boat. The two really things that tweaked my interest were the OBX8 launch and the PWM hybrid synthesizer. Would I get it? I'm not sure. I'd have to go and play it. But they were the two things that actually sort of I went, okay. But in the last week, what really made me watch a video on YouTube was the fact that Andertons filmed a video of this pre-production release. So in all the other stuff that's going on, the UBXA, which is considered probably old news because we all know it's coming, but Andertons filmed a video of it. But why did this resonate with me? Well, the caveat, of course, is that obviously Andertons want you to log on to their website. They want you to log on to the website and they want you to order product. They may well get me to do that if I can persuade someone to lend me the money. But their videos are always fair. This is the thing about Andertons, is they don't hype something that they don't believe needs to be hyped. And in fact, they don't hype things anyway. They generally tend to give a fairly honest review, which is why I like the couple of guys that do the reviews for Andertons. I don't necessarily watch the guitar reviews, guys, so if it's sort of guitar-based stuff, I tend to switch off. I'm not a guitarist. I have no intention of being a guitarist, and therefore anyone who's chundering over a new Fender or a Gibson or something else, rock on. It doesn't float my boat. But the keyboard and the drum machines and the electronic stuff, the guys who do those reviews are quite fair in how they actually set stuff out. And it's the first video I've seen on the UBXA that does not concentrate purely on the sound. Okay, there's lots of videos out there where people are demonstrating the sound of this unit. And I think I can give you a fairly fair assessment. It actually sounds very good. But this video, I was going to say something else here actually. There is a really good video actually if you want to understand the sound architecture, the sound of the UBXA, and it's by Synth King. We'll try and remember to put a link below, but it's one of my favourite actually of demonstrating the capabilities sonically of this box. But what Andertons' crew did was they talked about how the keyboard was laid out and what controls were there for which controls performed functional and which controls performed performance changes and how you could put these together to create combinations. So you basically have this concept of a fixed patch and a performance modification. And that was quite something. I suppose other keyboards kind of have it, but they don't have it to the same degree. I'm thinking of the Jupiter X that has different sonic capabilities within the patch based on certain parameters that you can automatically flick on and off. But they're on and off switches. They're not interaction. So this kind of like looked quite good. Haven't played it, all right? I will put the caveat there. I haven't played this. And the performance controls for the UBXA are in that sort of area where you'd typically find the modulation and pitch bend. There's a raft of other controls around there. And as I understand it, it's all to do with an additional oscillator that can be assigned to do stuff. Okay, don't quote me on that because I really haven't got into the details, but that's how I understand it. There's a comment, and you don't see this very often on videos when they're trying to sell product, about the quality of documentation. Now, those of you who have worked with legacy synthesizers, like the the Rolands of the day, will know that whoever wrote the documentation basically spoke gobbledygook in Japanese and then translated it word for word. Sorry, Roland, but it's honestly true. But they commented on the quality of the documentation. Now, this is a pre-production model, and the fact that Behringer have got all the documentation together and Andertons were really, really complimentary about it, I think that shows how they are going to launch this synth. As I said, the review was honest, and the conclusion by the guy who was doing the synthesizer review was, this is the best synthesizer he has seen released in years. And you kind of believe him because of the journey he went through in terms of the synthesizer. He also made a very big thing about saying, I don't normally get asked to comment on price when I do this, but this synthesizer is going to hit the market sub £1,500. Now, why did he say that? Is this really trying to reinforce this sort of marketing of synthesizers for all, which seems to be something that's coming out of the Music Tribes arena? Now, for those that don't know, Music Tribes is the holding company for Behringer and a number of other brands. So, the one thing I do notice now about the UBXA and now looking at the OBX8 is the layout is very similar. The colours are different, but the layout is very, very similar in terms of where the buttons are. In terms of groupings, etc. Is this an Oberheim standard? You see, I look at the old Oberheim OBXA and I look at the UBXA, and yes, the UBXA is a very close facsimile, and the OBX8 is a very close facsimile as well in terms of looks and groupings. What this video really did for me is it just reinforced the fact that I really want one of these synthesizers. Can I justify one of these synthesizers? I'm a keyboard player. Of course I can't. Doesn't mean you don't want one though. And put it like that, I mean, if I was really letting my head rule my heart, I wouldn't have bought half the collection I have. But I love playing keyboards, and going through later in the year, you'll actually see me start playing keyboards a lot more. I haven't really been playing in the last 6. I've played, but I haven't really been playing to the sort of the extent that I used to, for all kinds of reasons. And one of the housemates said to me the other day that you seem to have got your mojo back, and it seems to be coming back. I seem to be slowly climbing out of the area where I was. That's my phone going off. But I've been in a really dark place for about a year. I know it doesn't come across on video, but I have been in a really dark place for about a year. So, going back to really what this was about, do I want one? Yes. Can I afford one? No. That's a different conversation. But anyone else, I suppose, looks at the UBXA and says, you know what, I'm going to dip my hand in my pocket and I'm going to buy one of these. I think I've always thought, and I'll be honest, this is kind of honesty stuff coming through here. But I've always thought that the sounds of the 80s, yes, they can be better than modern keyboards do things in a much better way. But the actual sounds, that synth pop era was just fab. And on that note, I'm going to say, live long and prosper. See you later. Bye.